Welcome back, my friends, to TFT Hyperroll with Autarch, and today I'm going to show you an interesting little build that you can use when you get the right champs and the right situation. Wouldn't try to force this one, but when it presents itself, yeah, it can be a lot of fun to pull off. Now, there are two ways to use the headliner that I'm going to be using today, which is Annie. And it's either in a SpellWeaver Emo build, where you're really going to rely on Amumu and Poppy to be your solid frontline while she cleans up, or there's another way to do it. And let's get into it. And it begins, of course, with picking up Annie SpellWeaver. She is, of course, going to be key, and you need the SpellWeaver trait to be the additional. Now let's take a look at the first set of augments, and then we'll get into what makes this a little bit different than other ones. Since there was no disco, I wasn't going to take a disco augment. Ascension, not right. Portable Forge, I kind of feel like it's hard to go wrong with it because you're gonna likely pick up something that will be useful, in this case, a little more tankage up front. We are getting lucky with our rolls, so we're getting well along to Annie. What we want to do at this point is just tank up the front line and then put a decent Annie item out there, which will be the Archangel Staff, the Needlessly Large Rod, and the Tier. Now, the difference between this and the other Annie build is we're going to be heading into SuperFan and KDA. The reason we go SuperFan is because she will get an additional item. When we recorded this, it was Spear of Sojin. They've changed it to Jeweled Gauntlet, so now you'll have to make a mana item. Back here, we didn't. As you can see, now that we put Gnar out, we have our 3 SuperFans, and Annie now has a Spear of Sojin. So we just have to focus on additional power items for her, rather than either creating a Spear of Sojin or a blue buff. So it gives us a little room to play. Item choices here, while I was hoping for a Needlessly Large Rod, I'm going to use this to focus on the front line, and we can go ahead and get the Chain Vest, which will allow us to create a Gargoyle Stone Plate on Lilia, who is currently serving as our main tank. We're also going to pick up any SpellWeaver we have, so we're staying locked so we can get Seraphine in the next round. And even though we haven't ticked SpellWeaver yet, you can see just how evil Annie is. We are really going to need to get her to 3 stars if we want to be able to compete towards the end, but for early game, she is a little unreasonably strong, and you can see that right here as she wins the match and destroys the damage charts. It is now time for our second set of augments, and there is nothing that is going to work in this first group, so we'll go ahead and re-roll them. One at a time. Balanced budget looks pretty good because we need that 3-star Annie, and we still haven't gotten an additional one. So this will give us money over the next few rounds to roll down while we still have a decent chance of getting 1 costs. Now, the other nice thing in this particular comp is that you have a much easier time pivoting away from it if you want to, because you're building SuperFan out. You can essentially later on bring in anyone as your headliner, and they will start with what is generally considered a decent item for them. We're going to go ahead and bring in a Vex because that is going to tick Emo, which reduces the amount of mana Annie needs to cast, so she'll be casting even more often. Her spells are pretty destructive, as you've already seen, and when she's casting more, yeah, it's a lot more damage. Time for an item choice, and it's a difficult one for me because the Needlessly Large Rod I'm going to need for Annie in the future, but if I get the Champion Duplicator, I end the search for Annie. I decide to go that route. I don't know if it was the right choice because I still had a decent chance of rolling 1s, but I really wanted to make sure I had the 3-star Annie. 3-star Annie, even with just 2 items, can be inherently cruel. She is very, very strong. With the Emo mana reduction, she's casting more often, and you can just see how much damage she's doing, as she is the one pretty much taking each person out. So I want to take a moment to show you a swap I'm going to make and explain why. We're going to grab Nico, and Amumu. We're going to bring in Nico and replace Kennen entirely. This is so we can easily get to KDA later. We also bring in Amumu because that will take Guardian along with Nico, so now we have a bit of Guardian in the build as well as Emo. Now we're going to play a little game called Don't Do What Autarch Does. Yes, roll the augments if they're not what you want, but I decide I'm gonna grab Unified Resistance because I feel like I can just keep everyone in a line. I'm forgetting in that moment that one of my plans was to bring in KDA, which is so not conducive to Unified Resistance. They are pretty much polar opposites. Well, let me correct that a little bit. They're not polar opposites. There are certain KDA boards where Unified Resistance will make sense, but you don't know which one you're gonna get until you make it. I could have made it by bringing in Seraphine to see what it is, but it already would have been way too late. My suggestion, if you decide to do this, don't take Unified Resistance unless you know which KDA board you are getting. Luckily, at the moment, this team is generally strong enough to possibly overcome my stupidity. It is time for an item choice, and we could go either with the Sparring Glove or the Tear of the Goddess. Given that we have Unified Resistance and the board is not entirely unfriendly to it, at least I have a row of 3 in the front and then in the back, I decide to go with a second Archangel Staff, continue to tank up Amumu, so our front line is going to be strong. That should allow Annie the time to get more powerful with the dual Archangel Staffs. The difference between Archangel Staff and Jeweled Gauntlet is whether you are playing for quick burst down or you expect your team to last a long time. Given my front line in this case with the 2 Guardians, Amumu and Lilia, and the items they have on there, I expect the matches to last a little bit longer, so I expect the Archangel Staff to do a little bit better for me. It is time for an item choice, and while not necessary, since it's going to offer, we can go ahead and grab a KDA emblem, which will allow us then to get to 5 KDAs because we're going to be bringing in Ahri. Otherwise, we would have essentially been stuck at 4. We give it to Amumu because it's going to help boost his health while he is on the circle, and that will make that front line that much more tanky. And you can certainly expect to run into some rapid fire builds. In this case, the Edge of Knights that they are running are really getting in our way because Annie stops attacking them when we need her to, so she is not able to finish off that Jinx. After the NPC round, my goal is to enhance Ahri as she is going to be our additional spellcaster in this build. Spear of Sojin so she can cast more often. She has been nerfed, but only at the 3-star level, so a 2-star Ahri is still going to be pretty effective. With Ahri now in the casting as well, I expect things to go a little bit smoother. She is pretty strong, not as strong as a 3-star Annie with those items, but she will weaken things so that Annie can finish them off. And Annie and Ahri working together will bring us into the top 4, and an item choice to make, which will be pretty easy. Nashter's Tooth, every time they cast, they will speed up. With the Spear of Sojin, that will work pretty well. What we're really looking for now is a Sona to finish this off. I've brought in a Poppy just in case we're unable to find Sona, but there she is. Sona is going to serve as our 7th SpellWeaver, taking us to that next level, and she's also a pretty interesting champ in that she can provide different benefits based on what you need, and you can switch them up as you go along. You just have to take her off the board and put her back on. But for now, Annie and Ahri are doing what they do best. It is time to bring in Sona and decide what role she is going to play, and given the way this build has gone, I'm going for damage. I want her to increase everyone's AP. Since Annie appears to be lasting until the end pretty consistently, I think that will help to close out this game. Time for our final set of item choices, and it's going to be Jeweled Gauntlet because we already have the Nashter's Tooth and Spear of Sojin. Then we're going to go ahead and just continue to enhance our backline. This will go on Sona, which will provide more damage boosting. And since Poppy is just simply a better champion than Amumu, while Amumu is great, Poppy is stronger. We got a 2-star Poppy, so we went ahead and switched them out so we have a slightly stronger front line. This is the rapid fire punk team, which is going to be very, very difficult, if not impossible, for us to get through. So many 3-star champs in front, and they were getting extra components because of the punk augment that they got. So they have a ton of items and are using Sona to heal. We end up facing the country team, which is one I'm pretty sure we can handle, even though they've now picked up a Ziggs with a blue buff and jeweled gauntlet. And Ziggs can do a lot of very deceptive damage. If you've ever seen a 3-star, it will wipe the board in one shot. Archangel Staff is usually a good item because Ziggs will gain power. Here, Sona's damage burst wipes out their team, leaving only Alawi's tentacles for us to finish off. And it ends up with us against the rapid fire team, which I don't necessarily think I can beat. But when I decide to check in on them, I notice that they've gotten rid of their 3-star Jinx. I think what they're trying to do is get a 3-star Lucian to try and wipe everything out. I've shifted a lot around so that Poppy would take the brunt of the damage when we go in. But you can see they now just have a 2-star Lucian and a second 1-star Lucian instead of their original 3-star Jinx that they had there. They put much more into the front line, which likely helped them against the country team, but is not going to help them against our team, which is doing lots of burst magic damage. And Poppy is able to hold back Lucian and finish everything off for the win, and it's GG for everyone. Give this a shot if you get a SpellWeaver Annie. Head into SuperFan, you'll get the item you need. You just gotta get her to 3 stars. Hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have an absolutely, absolutely awesome day.